I hope the microphone's on. All right. That's a hard act to follow. So, my name's Daniel. I'm from the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. And tomorrow, together with our good friends from the Global Network of Civil Society Organizations for Disaster Reduction, we'll be talking about community-based risk assessment tomorrow at 2 o'clock in this room. So what are we talking about when we talk about community-based? Obviously, it's local level, but I'm talking really local. We're talking households and individuals. It's a participatory process, so we've heard a lot about really cool high-tech modeling systems, remote sensing, all sorts of fun stuff. At community level, we're talking about dialogue with communities, about helping them and helping us to understand their capacities, vulnerabilities, hazards, risks, perceptions of risks. And we tend to focus quite a bit on vulnerability and capacity. Who are the vulnerable people? Where are they? What capacities do they have to manage their risks? And also, what capacities do the communities themselves as a whole have to manage their risks? So community-based risk assessment is actually all about empowering communities to really understand their environment, because of course they understand it actually better than we do, but maybe not be able to really quantify it, and to prioritize issues. Our ultimate goal isn't the actual risk assessment, but it's to come up with community-driven solutions to their risk problems, so that they can come up with priorities on how to manage their risks, to use their own capacities, and to reach out when they need support from partners, from the government, and from local colleagues, and from the international system. It's a lot more than mapping. We're looking at risk perceptions and cultural contexts, trying to understand how people deal with the risks and think about them in the daily struggle, and how they want to try to manage them. We also use community-based approaches to monitor and do early warning. This woman clearly knows better the condition of her livelihoods than any national system that is trying to pick up information on droughts or on fodder pricing. She knows what's going on, and we need her to tell us so that we can do something and help her. One of the challenges we face is on local hazard data. It's often not available, or it's at a resolution that's too broad for us to be able to use in a community, or quite simply, we don't have the capacity in the communities to really understand or even use the data that's out there. Now, we can do a good hazard mapping like this with the community, and it's very useful for them to understand what's going on and to help them plan, but there's limitations. It's a great map, but I don't think I would use it for any legal zoning projects. In terms of decision making, we want to make sure community-based risk assessment is used at all levels, and this requires disclosure of information at all levels, from national down to local, from local back up to national, and always an interflow between. The challenge is how to exchange this information when you have different perceptions, different levels of capacity, different technologies, and different ways of communicating. It can be quite difficult. So whether you're using community risk information to help set up a national, say, response network for droughts in East Africa, or maybe you're using national information to help inform a community-based early warning system, the key issue is this last mile of exchanging information in a usable and understandable manner. One of the big things we're trying to do is use more community information, risk assessment information upstream, meaning influence national and global and regional policy and dialogue and decision-making with community information. But man, this is difficult. There are tons of community assessments going on everywhere all the time in all sorts of different formats, and there's no global system to bring it all together. Sometimes it's qualitative, sometimes it's quantitative, sometimes it's not even written down. How do we get this all together into clear messaging everyone can understand? One thing we'll learn about tomorrow, we'll hear about from our friends at the Global Network, is this great initiative they've been doing called Views from the Frontline, which is a good, solid start to this kind of an upscaling of community information. It has had global and national impact. Let's talk a little bit about political will. In order for community information to be used at the national and the global level, it has to be recognized as an added value and as something useful. Vulnerable people, they have to have a space and political support to talk and be part of the process. So community risk assessment is part of a greater social process of empowerment and of inclusion in decision-making. Now, we've heard about all sorts of cool technologies today. We'll hear more about them throughout this entire conference. Of course, we're starting to use those too in our community risk assessment and in bringing together our different community information. We also are looking into new partnerships on how to do this, and I would say this conference is actually a good start at some kind of a partnership. Here are our panelists. Unfortunately, our friend from Kenya had to stay in Kenya due to ongoing flood operations. So instead, we have a good friend from the Caribbean, the Red Cross Caribbean office, who will jump in. Anyway, we hope to see you tomorrow, 2 o'clock here.